Good evening, and we extend a very warm welcome to all of you who joined in this conversation. Sorry for being a bit late. We had some technological issues, but that's what that's happening to all of us. So I hope you will understand our situation. This evening in the Artscape Stories of Impact series, it is my absolute pleasure to welcome Ms. Ratnaboli Roy. Ratnaboli has been a clinical psychologist. She's a Ashoka Fellow, a mental health activist who's working in this space for more than 2 decades. She's the founder of a Kolkata based NGO called Anjali, which provides training, livelihood options to people with psychosocial disabilities living in government institutions. Welcome, Ratnaboli, and thank you so very much for your time.
Thank you, Kamalika. It's a delight and a pleasure to be in conversation with you. I really thank Artscape and your team for the wonderful creative and outreach. And to your audience, I also apologize for the technical glitch, but hopefully we shall be able to continue the conversation. And gratitude, Kamalika, to be having this conversation. Thank you so much for inviting me over.
Ratnaboli, yours is a very, very valuable voice in this space. You have so much of work behind you and you've invested so much time in helping people. I would begin by asking you that this last 3 months, we've been faced with an unprecedented situation. It's been almost 100 years after which we are seeing something like this happening to us. What has been your idea, your takeaway from the pandemic, from the lockdown situation, and how do you think this is affecting individuals and in their mental space, particularly?
Kamalika, that's a very critical question. I particularly like how you use the word pandemic. Now, the larger question is that do we formulate within the language of COVID being just a pandemic? Because our formulation will, of course, yield different kinds of data and different kinds of perspective. Because for me, as you know, I wear several hats and I have an intersectional identity. I am a mental health worker. I am also a feminist. I'm also a human rights defender. Therefore, taking into consideration all the identities, for me, this is not just a pandemic.
Okay.
Because the way this pandemic has impacted people is critical. And it has impacted people across board in many different ways. So there is not just one way that it has impacted. Therefore, on one hand, when we speak about the pandemic, on one hand, we are talking about a virus which has been imported from China. And on the other hand, we are also discussing the response to that virus. And in responding to that virus, we have witnessed a huge social pandemic. Therefore, this pandemic is not just a pandemic in the way we have been affected before. For example, where you are sitting, Kamalika, at the moment and talking to me, Bombay. In 1918, Bombay witnessed Bombay flu, which killed millions of people. That was also a pandemic. And therefore, this is not the first pandemic, neither it is going to be the last pandemic. But the importance is how you are formulating the understanding of pandemic. For me, this is a humanitarian crisis. This is a huge social distress. It's a huge inequality. And when you talk about pandemic, Kamalika, I am left with two extremely defining moments of our country. One defining moment is where I have seen migrant guest workers walking miles after miles without any support, a child on this trolley, that image. And the other image which has defined India is disinfecting thousands of migrant workers with insecticide and pesticide. Therefore, my view on the pandemic, it's just not one way or the other. For me, it is not just a health issue. It is human rights issue. It's a gender issue. It's a social issue. And we have to look at this pandemic beyond the narrow understanding of public health.
Correct. I get you, Ratnaboli. And I resonate with everything that you said, because those images have given each one of us sleepless nights. Or as you spoke about the child on the trolley, as I can see them again in front of my eyes. Those laborers sitting on that roadside, and it's getting sprayed by those disinfectants. As you're saying, I'm getting goosebumps because I'm just relating, because I would want to share something with you, Ratnabali, because to personally, these images were haunting me so much that for some time I was just not being able to sleep as well.
Yes.
It just kind of kept, because that news and this repeated these sites that were kept getting played out on national television channels as well as on social media, it kind of affected each one of us, who are, we can call ourselves with any sense of responsibility. It just affected each one of us so hugely. And I also agree with you that this is much more than a medical issue. It's much more than a medical crisis. It's kind of, just laid out in front of us, disparity in our society, the haves and the have-nots. This disparity, this line of distinction has never been clearer than it is at this point of time.
Kamalika, I really like the articulation, how you have put across the fissures and fault line of social inequality. I think all kinds of fault lines have deepened and broadened with this pandemic. I'm so thankful for that articulation, Kamalika. Yeah.
Coming to the work that, with Anjali or any other population, or if we just talk about a general everybody, you, me included, how do you think that people have been affected emotionally? And what do you think about how do we get over this? Because this is not going to just be, we won't get cured of this. The emotional distress, this is not going to leave us very soon. And we are all having to deal with this at different levels, because this emotional crisis that we are all faced with, how do you think, and what would be your advice, how to deal with this?
Thank you, Kamalika. But just responding to that in a second, may I just talk for, say, a minute on what we do as Anjali?
Absolutely. Please.
Yeah,
of course. Love to hear it.
So the wonderful audience who have tuned in with us, and Team Artscape, let me quickly introduce the organization that I represent. It's Anjali, as Kamalika has said, and Anjali means offering. And here's the quick look of our brochure. So Anjali is going to complete 20 years Kamalika next year. We didn't think we will survive this long, not 2 decades, certainly. Certainly, it's all the blessings of the people like you who have rallied along with us to put across this cause and issue in the public domain. So as Kamalika was sharing, we have a large piece of work in the mental institution, which is called Voices, because it gives voices to the voiceless and who have been historically marginalized. And in the hospital, we do skills training for the residents. We find employment. We do family check-ins. We reintegrate with them with the families. Where the families are not present, where they have socially abandoned the residents without alternative living spaces. And then we have another piece within that hospital program is the creative part, which resonates so much with what you do, Kamalika, within Artscape. And that includes art, that includes music, dance, pottery, and creating lovely little things with block print and stuff. From the Voices program, organically grew the community program because we almost encountered where there was so much of discrimination, violence in the community, where we had to design an intervention that would prevent all of this. And would also shift the dialogue from illness to wellness. So the community program is essentially trying to change that discourse from illness to how we can stay well and be well, Kamalika, which also kind of resonates with the work that you are doing. And this is where we converge so well and make these two concepts dance so well, both Artscape and Anjali. And the third piece of work is how we can actively lobby and do advocacy on behalf of these voiceless people to get policies made, policies changed, laws changed, so that the overall environment of the country kind of becomes supportive and does reasonable accommodation. So these are the three strong pillars of Anjali, and we have been working with that. And as you said, that 2 decades have kind of enriched our viewpoint. Sometimes we have fallen truly like a teenager. Sometimes we have been bruised, but we have never stopped to challenge or ask questions. Next year, when we will step into young adulthood, hopefully our behavior will change and we will become emotionally a little more mature and not ask uncomfortable questions so much. Now, coming to your question that how people are being impacted emotionally. Kamalika, you know me well. You have known me for a long time as I know you. And you know that I cannot give out prescriptions because I don't believe in a homogeneous prescription, because I personally deeply hold that each of us are unique and each of us bring absolutely diverse kind of experiences with us, our trajectory, because a lot of it depends where you are located in terms of socio-economic, political, religious contexts. So considering all of that, as I was saying, that COVID has impacted very differently. very different. It has impacted me, and I consider myself extremely privileged with, with my class, with my caste, with my education, etc., etc. It has impacted me deeply in a different way. And when I look at the constituency in the mental hospital or say in the community, the resource poor women, they have been impacted completely differently. When we are going in the community, in the semi-urban areas, in the rural, deep North Bengal, as in Kuch Bihar, we are hearing stories about emotional distress due to domestic violence, due to addiction, due to loss of job, due to loss of infrastructure, due to not getting the benefits that government is offering. And most importantly, Kamalika, the entire displacement that has come with the pandemic. So the emotional response is also very layered. I cannot say that the women in the community, the rural population is hugely affected by anxiety and depression, because there is also fear. There is also uncertainty. There is also a lot of panic. There is also loss of citizenship. So when we are thinking of emotional distress, we also have to layer it. And we have to understand that the emotional distress Kamalika Guha Thakurata is going through sitting in Bombay is not the same emotional distress or the level or the intensity or even the articulation of that distress is not going to be the same as a Rama living in interior Borjala Gram in 24 Parganas. So that is very important to take into consideration. And while we are talking about emotional distress, Kamalika, it's very important to remember how we are articulating that, how we are verbalizing that, because verbalizing needs a lot of sophistication. To say that I'm not feeling well requires a certain kind of, for a lack of a better word, intellectual sophistication. It will probably present in front of a mental health worker like us, those who go in the community, as having aches and pains, as having as experiencing loss of appetite, as not sleeping, as not having any interest. So you have to put all that fragmented conversation into a coherent piece to understand where it is hurting before you prescribe something. But yes, if you're asking for a prescription, there are many things that can be done. And that many things will also depend on what your resources are. If I'm sitting in Borjala in 24 Pargana, I will not be able to afford a therapist. While someone sitting in Rashbihari Avenue in my home will perhaps be able to access. And very interestingly, Kamalika, the psychosocial support gap has also deepened and broadened, because the services that were available because of the pandemic, all attention has been diverted towards management of that pandemic and not so much the psychosocial aspects or a consequence of that pandemic. Does that answer your question?
It does. And from here, I want to ask you, Ratnaboli, something that as you said, here now the focus is on managing the pandemic, managing the the medical problem, but we are not taking cognizance of the effects or the consequences that it has had on our emotional being, right? From here, there is a one question that Ratnabali, it irks me a bit, because I don't know why, even in spite of so many conversations around mental well-being, why do you think that people don't pay attention? Why is our physical being, so important? And Ratnabali, it's not, I understand that somebody who's in the villages, somebody who's lesser resourced families or environment, for them maybe food is more important, surviving is more important. But here I'm talking about for people who can still maybe, reach out to take care of their emotional self. Why do you think that this has not been a priority for most? Why do you think this happens?
Your question, Kamalika, has two parts. One is that why is it that people are not paying attention to mental health? And the other part of your question, if I'm allowed to paraphrase, is why, quote unquote, people with some semblance of privilege are not keen to access mental health services. Is that right? Kamalika, is that right? Okay.
Yes.
I will perhaps respond to it by saying that how many hoardings have you seen in your city on mental health? How many newspaper articles have you read in the last 7 days that talk about mental wellness, not illness, wellness? So the point I'm trying to make, that to capture the imagination of people, there has to be active effort by the state. And if state historically relegates the issue of mental health to the margins, you cannot expect people to get interested, to popularize the discourse of mental health. Polio eradication took almost 22 years to disappear. But that also because of active intervention by the state. So this brings us to a very critical point, and which is not discussed at all, is the institutional discrimination and institutional stigma. Because we are so caught up in understanding of stigma in a rather constricted way, that where, say, my family is discriminating, where family is stigmatizing, my neighborhood is discriminating, my husband is stigmatizing. But much more discriminatory is our state, because it is not allowing people to access benefits of mental health. And it is also, as a consequence, the allocation of money. The fact that you don't see hoardings, the fact that you don't see discourse is because the historical bias in allocation of funds. So if I am spending 50 rupees in defense, I am spending 3 rupees in mental health, 10 rupees in physical health. That's one. Secondly, we are not talking about mental health, and mental health is not a priority because of lack of critical mass of people like us. There has to be a critical mass of people, but things are changing. Things are changing, and there is a silver line, which is why we are having this conversation, which is why we are getting the opportunity to address the biases. Yeah. Yeah, and also along with it, there are issues of shame and honor, because we are still not comfortable in disclosing that there is a person with mental illness in our family because of smaller kind of inequalities, because of discrimination. If I disclose, I might not get the job, even though I'm competent. If I disclose, I cannot get married to the partner that I wish to. because I'll still be judged through that frightening, regressive lens of mental illness that we saw, that we are used to from 50 years back. And very critically, India is standing at a very crucial juncture where we have not been able to abandon the traditional regressive methods of treatment and not fully embrace the hugely progressive methods of treatment. So we are at a cusp, and we are still not resolved. So we are also struggling.
Right. You know, Ratnabodi, thank you. You know, you are bringing so many perspectives in this conversation, which is, as I said, you've been such a valuable voice. So, and also, what I want to take forward is this: what you said about being judged. We are always, you know, looking at ourselves from somebody else's lenses. We are like, you know, leading our lives so that, you know, just with that fear of being judged. And also, you know, the reason that why we started these conversations is to create a sharing platform. When you talk about, you know, that how this is affecting everybody, when Ratnaboli talks about that, how it is important for us to recognize what we are feeling and talk about it, and there is absolutely no shame or discrimination in it. So we are hoping that anybody who's hearing you at this point of time probably feels empowered to say to herself or himself that it's okay if I'm crying, it's okay if I feel angry. So that was one of the prime reason that we thought that we must have a sharing platform, which maybe can somehow empower somebody, anybody who hears us today or sometime later this conversation. And Ratnabali, coming to, you know, the work that we have been doing, Artscape, it's in the same space of emotional management. But as you know, that, you know, I am basically, if I say my training is in the space of performing arts. I have been an actor, music, I've trained in that, I've been a dancer, and I've been in Bombay for the last 20 years also. So what I have done is I have tried to use my knowledge of the performing arts, and then I have tried to study the therapeutic side of it, which is why I learned, took a diploma in dance movement therapy. I have, so now Artscape has a team of facilitators who are trained in musicology, who are drama therapy, movement therapy, and together we create these sessions which are in the space of self-empowerment. And so this is, you know, from here I want to ask you, Ratnabali, what do you think? Do you of the power of expressive arts therapy? Do you believe that the arts can really make a difference?
Kamalika, first, congratulations in creating a platform like Artscape. And I must also congratulate you for the language that you just used. Team of facilitators. That's so important. Language is very political. And when you say facilitators, it means that you are just a catalyst and you are just helping a caterpillar to become a beautiful, beautiful butterfly. And that you are just that holding point, that you are just that guide, the Buddha. Yeah. So I really like that use of word, because essentially what we also challenge, Kamalika, is the therapist and therapy relationship, because there is inherent kind of power dynamic in that. And therefore, pretty much what the doctors do, essentially give you handover prescription, not listen to you, and therefore, you know, that kind of dynamic is kind of diffused and neutralized when you say facilitators. So that is a beautiful part of it, and which kind of made me happy. Uh, yes, that's very, very important, the language that we use. In my experiences, right from day one, I have always believed in alternative forms of treatment. When I say this, I don't mean that I completely trash the Western biomedical model. I don't, because as a person with psychosocial disability, as a person uh, who had deep mental health issues because of patriarchal oppression, I value the Western biomedical model, but that is, I do not agree with the primacy of the model because I have seen how art can help a person blossom. And I remember one girl in my early days of running on Julie who came from a very interior village. She was sexually assaulted, and then she was also taken to local quack Soja for treatment, where she was physically assaulted in the name of quote unquote treatment. And she just stopped talking. And she was incarcerated in the mental hospital because people didn't know where she came from, where her family was. She wouldn't speak a word. She wouldn't say a word. She would just be there listless. The doctor referred her to Anjali, and she would also be absolutely quiet. But we saw that slowly she is getting involved in painting, getting involved in music. And suddenly one day she said, "My name is Shakira. Shakira Bano." And that's what painting did. That's what music did. So for people who
Mm.
cannot verbalize their problem and sit on an atom bomb of trauma, it is only art and performing art and creativity that can sort of go deep into your psyche and help you verbalize, articulate. And I will never forget, Ami Shakira Bano. So, in whatever we are doing, even as homemakers, even as people who do not have a career in mental health, can access creative forms to resolve many conflicts that they have within their minds, be it sexuality, be it interpersonal relationship, be it aloneness, be it loneliness, be it introvertedness. Creative art form gives you a language, and it can become your best partner and best friend.
Absolutely. Creative. So we in this post, this COVID time, we have actually opened up all our sessions for everybody because we feel that now self care is very, very important. And as you know, I have shared with you, primarily our work has been with cancer patients, patients with chronic ailments, and their caregivers, their families. We work a lot with them. Our Beyond Academies programs work with children in lesser resourced families. Of course, we use the same process of expressive arts therapy, but given the population, our objective changes. Like for the patients, it's more about, self empowerment, uh, finding your inner resource, your inner resilience, because we feel that once
Correct.
you can, you have positivity, faith, whatever, however difficult the journey is or your situation is. But if you believe, then maybe the road to recovery and rehabilitation gets a wee bit easier. Similarly, we stress a lot on the families, the caregivers, Ratnabali. With we have seen, because we work a lot with patients who come to the Tata Memorial Hospital. You know how the medical fraternity are such a busy hospital. People are so busy,
Yes.
and the numbers are also so high that there is doctors or the medical staff have very little time to handhold them, other than the physical whatever they need on the medicine bit. So we step in there to help them how to deal with their anger, their feeling of frustration, so that they don't kind of just let go and just resign to their fate. We tell that, okay, just believe in yourself, because cutting yourself, how breast cancer patients or survivors, such body image issues, people with mouth cancer can't communicate, so resort to violence. Parents who have children who have cancer, the parents hit the children, not because they don't love, because of the frustration and because of they are so scared for them. So then we step in to say that, listen, first understand, where is your anger coming from? Why do you hit people? Why are you hitting your child? And then we give them small tips on using color. We give them a color red and say, tell us, what is this denoting for you? For somebody, it's the color of blood. For somebody, it's the color of love. So it's so amazing.
It is.
Similarly, we use this expressive arts therapy to teach value education to the children, like good
Yes.
habit, bad habit. We use storytelling, as you said. We use puppetry. We use music. We make them, write about themselves, a song about themselves. So,
Beautiful.
and then of course we practice gratitude. I think that's something that we all must,
Yeah.
practice gratitude.
Yes.
That
Yes.
whatever that, just immediately, two, three things every day before you go to sleep in the night, to think that, we have so many blessings, but we are not focusing on that way.
Absolutely. That's one of the key to well-being. And I think in one of the conversation earlier webinar, I did speak about keeping a gratitude jar and writing it in post-its. And then you see how much wealthy you are at the end of the day, how much wealth you have.
Absolutely. Journaling. Ratnavali, like you said, arts gives you a language, So a journaling is it just gives you a space to uh, just talk about yourself, talk about your feelings. And that's such a personal thing. There's no point in sharing with anybody. It's yours. But if
Yes.
we can write, and so that's also a way to vent out, particularly in today when we are all kind of, see, Bombay, the situation is much more difficult than what it is in Kolkata now. We're still homebound, we're still stuck in homes, we're not stepping out to work. So you imagine that families, four families, four members, five-member families, where everybody staying together, hold up together for so long, and that's not a normal situation for anybody. And I feel that at this point of time, people we are hearing are, losing their cool. There are, as you said, domestic violence, then there are a lot of anger issues happening, and people are just looking for an outlet. And I think journaling can be a beautiful outlet when you are just speaking to yourself
Yes.
that way, right?
Yes.
Ratnabali, to come from there, I just want to ask you that how did you cope with this time? The time that you were not going to work, the time that, about you personally, when the lockdown happened, how did you cope with your emotions?
Some I cannot say because this is a public platform and people are going to just, be very shocked, but you know what I mean. No. But Constitution keeps me going. That's one way to go. And I'm saying this with utter seriousness, Kamalika. Constitution gives me a lot of hope. And as you said, I did a lot of journaling. I practiced gratitude. I read a lot because usually reading becomes a luxury when you always have to kind of, go out and be there in the field. Actually, I also dressed up a lot for myself. And during the lockdown, I knew that nobody would come and visit me. I would not go anywhere, but like a true quintessential Bengali, I will dress up. And at 10 o'clock, I would be ready and sit there over the dining table and do my work, because that became my office space. So I have a designated office space in the house where I would go and sit. I would also chat with friends. And I want to talk about a mental process. I think I try to be very keen and very aware of the feelings that I'm going through and why I'm going through. It's a cognitive process, but I'm sure everybody can practice that. And if you're feeling sad, why you are feeling sad, and what's the trajectory of that sadness, where did it trigger from, and why did it trigger? And if you then do the dialoguing within yourself, you can reach a point where you feel relieved. So that mental process, I think we have to integrate in our lives, because for us, going to therapists is also very difficult. So we have to be our own therapist. I did spend a lot of time listening to music. I was born and brought up during the Beatles era. So my connection with rock and roll music was also a connection to protest and civil rights movement. So I listened to a lot of music, and I was also doing work.
Right.
And I was also going out. It's not that I was not going out.
You know, Ratnaboli, one thing that you said that I feel that something that I have followed myself, keeping a routine.
Yes.
So I think that was very important, that keeping a routine, that just because it's a lockdown, just not to be in bed till 2 in the afternoon, or just kind of there were good days and bad days, and I also not feeling, not worried about being judged, as I already mentioned to you, and I've also mentioned some conversations before, that I was having sleepless nights. I was not being able to sleep, and I realized again that, like you said, this trajectory, this journey, I then realized and accepted it, that why am I not sleeping? Then I realized that it is those visuals and that constant hearing the news on, and also the posts on social media, they were staying back with me. That's when I also backtracked and I understood that what is the trigger? Why am I not getting sleep? And then I took a conscious call that, okay, post 9 o'clock or post 8:30, I am not going to look at social media. I'm not going to look at my news. And then that's when I used to hear a lot of music, and I heard a lot of motivational talk as well. And that's when, and also I feel that each one of us is very important, as you rightly mentioned, to accept what we are always, I feel that we are in a state of denial. We are in a state of denial, and even to our own self, forget sharing with anybody. We deny and deny accepting what we are feeling, and we don't kind of let ourselves believe in it. So I think the first step, I think that if anybody is listening, would be to accept what you're feeling. Only then, once you acknowledge that, can you do something about it.
And I'll just add one line, Kamalika, that it doesn't matter if you're not in control of things. Why should you always have control over things? There are things which are beyond our management. So we have to learn to accept that we cannot micromanage everything in our lives. There are some things beyond management.
Absolutely.
And let that chaos happen, because out of that chaos, cohesion will emerge, dance will emerge.
Yes. See, Ratnabali, we've been so busy micromanaging and, charting our own careers and our life paths. Just see, and how this 2020 has put everything in disarray. All
Absolutely.
our plans
Yeah,
have gone for a toss,
absolutely.
So, Ratnabali, before we just end this conversation, I just want to ask you personally, again, I'm asking if you're okay to answer. What is that one learning that you had about yourself in these last 3 months?
Be humble. Express your humility. It doesn't matter what you have achieved. It doesn't matter whether your name is written in the history of mental health of India. Be humble that you're alive. Be humble that you have so much of wealth around you. Be humble that you have a family. Be humble that you have a home. Be humble that you have food on your plate. Be humble that you have songs and birds in your life.
So beautiful. Absolutely. That's something that really we need to be grateful for. And I really, same Ratnabali, um, when again going back to all the images and all the hardship that we've seen people facing, and of course that we have also experienced, I think this is the time to be grateful for everything and anything that we've got in this journey, and to hold it all closer. I feel that we must hold, our ourselves closer. We must acknowledge ourselves and love ourselves a little bit more, and of course, hold our closed one closer. And I feel that this is also for me, Ratnabuli. Again, I feel same. I felt a lot of gratitude for all that I have, and also I felt that. Uh, there is a universe and destiny has a plan, and however much we make our own plans, everything is not possible to micromanage, and every is not always possible to that things will go our way, and that's what we should be prepared for. And Ratnabali, I can't thank you enough, dear.
I
I
cannot thank you enough either, Kamalika. And this is also, a demonstration how things are pre-planned and engineered somewhere else. Who knew that I would be meeting you on web? Who knew I would be bumping into you at the airport? I have always admired you from a distance. I always knew about the illustrious family that you belong to. I knew about your achievement, but to be acknowledged by you is also a huge reward for me, Kamalika.
You're being too
It
kind,
is.
Ratnabali. You're too kind.
No.
And I really want to thank you once again. And I hope that you will be in touch with the work that Artscape is doing. And as
And we will find out a way to collaborate with each other and see how we can make a bigger dance happen.
absolutely, absolutely, universe. And Ratnabali, with your permission, Tiasha will just play a small film which talks about why summing up this entire conversation on that, why mental health should be taken, given attention to. So we
Thank
have,
you. Thank
Tiash,
you. And I also want to thank Tiash for everything that she has done, even fixing the technical glitch that we were experiencing right at the beginning. So thank you so much.
thank you, Ratnabali.
Thank
Tiasha,
you.
if you,
Yes.
Tiasha, do play the film, please.
Beautiful.
So I will just end this conversation, Ratnabali, by asking everybody, like just what we said in the video, be kind to yourself. You
Absolutely.
deserve that.
Yes.
Thank you and have a good evening, and we will be in touch.
Have a wonderful weekend, Kamalika.
Thank you.